guys, welcome back to this channel. If you're stopping by for the first time, this is Mercy Vibes and you're so welcome. Please do it to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification button so you see my video as I upload them. Today we are going to be reacting to Australian word geographical quirks. I'm going to put it out on the screen so you read it for yourself. So guys, let's check this out together.
You might not already know. These are the Australian states and territories. Here's Tasmania, the only island state, ringed by ocean and cut off from the rest of the continent by the Bass Strait. Except it's not quite. If we zoom in, we can see that Tasmania and its northern neighbour state Victoria actually share a land border on this tiny and uninhabited island. The maritime border between the two states cuts right across Boundary Islet. This little islet border anomaly arose as the result of surveying errors and misinterpretations when repeatedly carving off sections of the colony of New South Wales into what are today Tasmania and Victoria. Boundary Islet is basically a chunk of rock that sometimes has some seals lounging on it. Speaking of disjointed borders, the Australian Capital Territory, or ACT, was carved out of New South Wales so the federal government could have a territory of its own from which to govern. But they felt strongly about the federal government also having access to a seaport, so instead of making the ACT somewhere on the coast, they just annexed another small territory, the southern peninsula of Jervis Bay. Jervis Bay is a separate territory from the ACT, but when it comes to federal elections, the people of Jervis Bay vote in the electorate of Fenner, which is centred in the ACT. And in terms of geographical quirks of electorates, spare a thought for the people of Norfolk Island, who vote in the ACT electorate of Bean, 1,900 kilometres away. But that isn't even the furthest removed local representation in the country. The electorate of Lingiari encompasses the red centre of Australia, the tropical top end of the Northern Territory, minus the urban areas of Darwin and some of Palmerston, and Christmas Island, which is 2,500 kilometres away. And there are some even more widely distributed pockets of Lingiari. Maybe it needs a video of its own. While we're on the topic of the outback, Australia is home to some really large pieces of land that are used for cattle stations. The largest is Anna Creek Station, which is the largest cattle station in the world. It's over 23,000 square kilometres, which is a larger land area than 50 of the world's countries. And it's also true that the country of Brunei used to own a station in Australia that had a larger land area than Brunei itself, although it sold the station in 2018. Back to the state borders now. And while Australian Aboriginal people have of course been living on the land with their own boundaries for tens of thousands of years, when white colonists tried to divide it up, the results were imperfect. Here's the border of Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia. Looks like it should be a pretty neat line, right? If we zoom in, we can see that the borders are actually a bit of a mess. Victoria juts out to the northwest. The river boundary moves from being along the southern bank to being in the middle of the river, and the intersection of the three states is in the middle of the river. So why isn't this just a nice line? The 141st meridian was originally surveyed to be the eastern border of South Australia. However, it was incorrectly placed about 3.5 kilometres west of where it actually lies. When the mistake was discovered, New South Wales decided it was fair enough and established the accurate meridian as the border. Victoria kind of went, yeah, no, we like the border where it is, leaving us with this mess today. And Australia has another line that looks straight, but it's actually not. The borders of the Northern Territory, South Australia, and Western Australia. This north-south line cutting across the entire continent looks dead straight. But if we zoom in, we can again see there's a tiny perturbation. This deviation is only 127 metres long, and was of course the result of another surveying error 100 years ago. The border was intended to be approximately on the 129th meridian, so instead of measuring from one end of the continent to the other, 2 points were picked at either end that were pretty close to the meridian.
Wow, talking about border, most countries, even my country, Nigeria, we have issues with border. We have interstate border issues. Sometimes it even leads to clash where people fight and you have loss of life and all that. Even up until now, it's very hard to settle border issues because this other tribe would be like, my grandfather, my ancestors told me that this is our land, and this will be like, my ancestors told me that this land you guys cheated us and this is not how it's meant to be. Like, different stories will be coming up and you don't know how. Boundaries, it's very hard to settle boundary issues, and right now I'm seeing it in an international country. Like, I think Australia is a continent on its own with countries in the with countries too, so it's very hard to settle borders. Any to settle border issues, like, it's hard.
And a north-south line was drawn from each point. Except, of course, the points were not exactly on the meridian, so the north-south lines didn't match up. Instead of fixing it, they just drew an east-west line to join the two north-south lines up. Could they have fixed it? For sure. But they had actually already agreed not to worry too much about little slip-ups like this. They'd agreed that an academic result was not to be sought after with a high and fanciful degree of accuracy. A century-old way of saying, she'll be right. And just a couple for my fellow Victorians who, like me, thought they had a good mental map of Australia in their head, but maybe I don't. Adelaide is north of Canberra, and Perth is north of Sydney. These realizations actually blew my mind. Well, that's it. I hope there was something for everyone in this video. Surprise island land borders, silly electoral boundaries, surveying mistakes, and surprisingly northerly cities. See you next time.
Wow, it's so interesting to know Brunei, where they have cattle farm that's as big as a country, and then Christmas Island, like, a lot of learning. And then knowing that even in international countries they have boundary issues too, like the way it's common here in my country, it's also like that outside the country. Like, this is so educative and interesting to know. And then he's saying that this is just his thoughts, like this is what his calculation. He's from, where did he say he's from again? I've forgotten. This is just his calculation, and this is what he thinks that, you know, the map is meant to, like, this is what he thinks about the map, like the Australian map. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this one, and please guys, do well to subscribe, turn on the notification button so you see my video as I upload them, and also you can do well to recommend whatever you like for us to check out on this channel. See you guys in my next video. Bye, stay safe and stay healthy. Love you guys.